With us in the break, Andy's just remembered that referring back to those Football Association suggestions or regulations going forward, an incident from your youth?
Yeah, it was when I was a small under 10, so a little kid, and I was playing for my team. Because I was small, I used to get put in goal a lot, and I was in goals for this one game. And I remember we won the game 36-0. Now, if that's the case...
That's not going to help anybody become a footballer, is it?
Well, it helped our centre forward. He must have scored 15 that day.
But that was the day you gave up dreams of being a goalkeeper.
I made up my mind then that I stood in goal for about, I don't know, maybe it was 60, 70 minutes in those days. I never touched the football once, and I thought, right, my mates are having more fun up the other end. And I made up my mind then I wasn't going to be a goalie.
36-0, you'd have probably ended up playing about 100 in the opposition.
Players, yeah. And they'd have still got beat.
Oh, no, we'll move on. It's Jose Mourinho.
I want to win like I did with Inter. They want to win like they did last season. And it's just one more day, so... And in a couple of years will be even more natural. And in 4 or 5 years, probably nobody will remember that I was Chelsea manager and becomes absolutely normal just because I left a couple of years ago. It's a big thing because it's a big match, because he's a big opponent, because he's the champion, because it's one of these matches between the top teams in the country. But by the emotional point of view, it's just one more game.
What's eating Jose? We'll get back to that. All of these games live on our beIN Sports channels this weekend. Goals live. Brilliant. As we go on beIN Sports 11. Normal service is resumed, I'm delighted to say.
News. Great news.
Very good news. OK, let's go to London and catch up with the chief football writer of the Daily Mirror. John, before we ask about Jose Mourinho, who's on fire in your office at the minute with these very clever back-page headlines?
Actually, there's a few good back-page headline writers. There really are. I must say, some of them really make me laugh. There's one guy in particular, Kevin Price, who down the years is a big pal of mine, who's absolutely fantastic. I often get blamed for headlines, but never ever take credit for them. But honestly, some of the guys in the office are geniuses, really are.
I have to say, at the minute, I think the Mirror, more than any other British newspaper, reality show this week, there's a very good example, coming up with some really clever lines.
Can I ask a quick question as well?
Yes.
John, where are you today?
I'm near the Chelsea training grounds. I'm in deepest Surrey, in Cobham. So I'm hoping that we won't have to use the bleep machine quite as much this week about Antonio Conte. But we might have to do, because the rumours and the stories about him and his troubled future, guys, continues to mount, doesn't it? It should be really interesting, actually, today. And, you know, also on the back of what Jose Mourinho said yesterday about Chelsea and Manchester United, going back there. I do think this game's got huge spice on Sunday. I'm at this game.
Do you think he'll see the season out, John?
The game of the weekend, really, because I think Mourinho's much to prove.
Will Conte be in charge in May?
Look, I'm not convinced, I have to say that. I would have said a few weeks ago he's ridden out the storm, and I thought what was really interesting, you might remember after the Watford game, that a few of the guys spoke to him in the tunnel, as we often do on a Saturday match for the Monday newspapers. And sometimes we certainly like to think, it's a bit more considered, and he's gathered his thoughts after the post-match immediate interview. And so he's been a little bit more reflective. In that interview, he himself, bearing in mind they'd come from behind in a potentially disastrous losing position into a winning position, and they went on to win the game, he himself brought up the word sack on several occasions. And it's clearly in his mind, he's clearly worried about it. I thought they had a disastrous performance in Rome this week. It really was. I mean, we shouldn't hide the fact when they went 1-0 down, they could have actually scored before Roma scored within a minute, which was remarkable in itself. And then in the next 20 minutes, Chelsea, I thought, were the better team. But then they went on to defend horrendously, and I just don't think it's a happy camp all round at the moment. You can tell that Conte is frustrated. I think the players are obviously feeling that in the dressing room, and he hasn't got a deep enough squad of enough quality, I don't think, to any way mount a defence of that title. And it's going to be a long, hard season for Chelsea.
John, what reaction is Alvaro Morata looking for with what he's been saying this week?
Well, I have to say, if he was in a frame of mind to go out on the pitch and prove a point, then he certainly didn't do so. I think he was one of the poorest performers, wasn't he, actually, on the pitch at Roma. Look, Andy, I don't know whether you agree, but I think he's a top-class striker, absolutely top-class. I really do think he's excellent. His hold-up play, his all-round skill and control, the way he brings other players into the game, and indeed he's a prolific striker as well. But I just don't understand where he's coming from. He made it clear, I don't think, that he's not entirely happy with London. And then he did a remarkable backtrack. I mean, he'd already been elected, I think, as the player to speak to the press at the Chelsea official press conference. And surprise, surprise, he then goes on to say how happy he is. And he's signed for 10 years. But I don't actually think that necessarily tells the complete full story, does it? I mean, we can read between the lines there. And I don't think that Morata is... listen, when Morata is fully fit and playing well, Chelsea have got a world-class centre-forward there. He's outstanding. But I think where Chelsea missed the trick was to sign a really top-class backup. And the fact they couldn't get Llorente, and Llorente went to Tottenham. And when Harry Kane is injured, as he was at Man United last week, Llorente still doesn't play. Chelsea must be kicking themselves that they couldn't get that deal over the line, because they don't have, as I say, enough backup and quality. Morata, I don't think, has enough pressure on him. He knows he's absolutely in every single week when he's fit. And I just don't think at the moment, you know, he's playing to his best. But Morata is a top-class player. But he's almost systematic of the troubles that Chelsea have got, because they've got quality in the team, in the starting 11. I don't think that too many of them, him included, are playing anywhere near their best or to their potential.
John, what's eating Mourinho?
Again.
Well, I have to say, guys, it did make me laugh yesterday. I mean, it wasn't just your clip that you played there, where he's obviously desperate to prove a point to Chelsea, isn't he? Because he's got this sort of rather fractious relationship now with Stamford Bridge, where, you know, he went back last season and they sort of, you know, heckled him a little bit. It obviously hurt his ego and his pride a little bit, bearing in mind, you know, he has won 3 titles, we shouldn't forget. But, you know, I mean, yesterday, I thought it was schoolboy stuff. I thought it was absolutely pathetic. We're not getting enough credit. And then he reels off some of sort of the stories and the headlines and the score lines as compared to some of the coverage that Spurs are getting. I mean, it almost felt like saying, you know, kind of it's like his 12-year-old sort of saying, you like Pochettino more than me. It's not fair, it's not fair. I mean, come on. I mean, that really is Mourinho at his absolute worst. Or best, depending on which way you look at it. But I think he's embarrassed himself there, guys. But I tell you what, I'll tell you what I think secretly is eating Mourinho. I think what's eating Mourinho is that I think he thought that they would be a tighter challenger for Man City. And that the notion that he could lose out to Pep Guardiola, his deadliest rival, who, we shouldn't forget, I think he overcame in Spain in many ways. I think it will haunt him and eat him up. And I think that, more than anything else, the fact that Mourinho has done business for 2 summers and is still in a place where I don't think Man United are in any way, you know, title winners. I think they'll be contenders, but I think that's what is eating Mourinho more than anything else.
Meanwhile, Pochettino went public and said, I couldn't possibly manage Barcelona, and my football club's Espanyol. But what he didn't say, John, is I can't manage Real Madrid at any point, and if they came, Dele Alli and Harry Kane go with him? What chance?
Well, I've got to say, I think a big chance because it's fascinating. I've seen a lot of Spurs recently. I've seen a lot of Pochettino recently. And the one thing that I think is that he's done very, very cleverly, whether that be in his press conference in Madrid or at the Spurs training ground, he's fluttered his eyelids, I think, at the Spanish media. He's made it, I think, plain that one day he would like to manage Real Madrid. I personally think he'll stay at Spurs for a while yet. So if Real Madrid come calling and they do so quickly, I don't think it will be Pochettino next. But I do think, because I think he's in the middle of a project there, but I think in the longer term, whether that's 2 years, 3 years or whenever, I think Pochettino will be Real Madrid manager in the future. And make no mistake about it, my impression is that Harry Kane is so happy at Spurs, he's a one-club man, but that can change dramatically if Pochettino, who has been his inspiration and his drive and his, you know, his number one fan and you know, promoter, I think if he were to leave, then I think I think it would be a draw for Harry Kane. And Dele Alli, to my mind, Dele Alli is a good lad, great player, fabulous, and I have to say he's got his mindset on playing for Real Madrid. It's his burning desire, his burning ambition, and I think he wants to realise that during his career. Absolutely no doubt that Dele Alli would one day like to play for Real Madrid.
John, are Arsenal fans a little concerned this weekend having to go to City? Might this be the turning point for Arsenal when they get a real good lesson?
Andy, I don't know what you mean, because I just read the headlines, the update. I don't know whether you've seen the breaking news that Arsene Wenger has been nominated for Manager of the Month. Arsene Wenger, Manager of the Month. Can you imagine that? He's on the shortlist with Sean Dyche, would you believe, Pep Guardiola, so why would Arsenal sort of be afraid of Man City? No, you're quite right, Andy. Listen, I think Arsenal, they've had a revival of sorts, haven't they? They've had a good run, interrupted, of course, by Watford, but they've generally done okay. I mean, look, it's a different team that they play in Europa League. It was an awful game, one of the worst games I've seen last night, and I'm thankful actually I watched it from a sofa rather from the press box. But look, this is the thing, it's all about for Arsenal. They've gone 3 at the back, they've tried to shore up the defence, they've looked better in recent games, but have they played a serious team? No, they haven't. Man City, that serious team, will know so much more about where Arsenal are after Sunday, because in my mind I think Man City are miles ahead of the rest. Pep Guardiola has built a brilliant team. They're so exciting to watch. They can destroy teams. They can destroy you if you're vulnerable or frail in defence, and Arsenal have certainly been that at times. This is the ultimate test, the barometer of where Arsenal are. So I do think this is a huge game for Arsene Wenger and for Arsenal, because they simply cannot afford another beating, if you like. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? They went to Chelsea earlier in the season and everyone was saying, look, they'll probably get beaten, but the one thing they can't do is do a lame surrender. And I get that impression again, actually, at Man City. They're in a slightly better place now than they were before that Chelsea game, but even so, we will still know a lot more on Sunday night about this Arsenal team than we do now.